Hello again, everybody. So following on from the last Luthier's lunch break episode, I'm going to go into a bit of detail about my methodology for preparing and using hide glue in a way which I think makes it almost as convenient as bottled, prepared glues like Titebond and so on. So let's get straight into it. Right, so the most basic things you're going to need are obviously your hide glue, some water, and a container to keep the glue in. Any sort of small plastic container will do. This, for example, this is a soy sauce bottle from an Asian takeaway. This is an eyedropper bottle. These are good because they already have the applicator there, so you can, when the glue's in there, you can drop small amounts out. But actually, my favourite is these old film cases. Oh, you can also buy commercial ones like these little glue injectors, they're called. But yes, my favourite is actually these old camera film containers. They work brilliantly. They're completely airtight. There's no leakage if you drop them on the floor or whatever. So to make up your glue, you just put some granules into your container, full, about 5 millimeters up. You can make as much or as little as you want, and then you just cover the granules with water, just enough water so that they're all soaked, and there's a little bit of excess water on top, not much. It's not an exact thing, you don't need to weigh anything, it's very flexible. And then you just leave that for 20 minutes or so, just to let the granules absorb some water. And then after that time, and then in future also to use the glue, you're going to need something to warm it up in. I use a baby milk or baby food warmer, which I picked up at a recycling centre. I calibrated it and put a mark here, so I just need to keep the knob in that position and the glue is automatically at the right temperature. I made a stand inside. It's pretty primitive, as you can see, but basically it just keeps the container with the glue in it off the bottom of the warmer, in case that gets too hot, because the glue will denature if it gets too hot. The temperature range is reasonably small, so the container sits on there and the ring at the bottom keeps the whole thing off the bottom. And I've got a lid and a brush to apply the glue, because this is how I normally do it. When it's in a dispenser like this, then obviously you can use it that way, but brushing is normally the way I do it, and it's probably the easiest. So you might be wondering what the correct temperature is for hide glue. It's around about 60 or 65 degrees Celsius, which I think is about 140 to 150 Fahrenheit. Anywhere in that range is fine, and that's what this is calibrated to. So when you've soaked your grains, they will look a little bit more jelly-like, and they will have absorbed the water that you put in. If there's a bit of excess water on the top, it's fine. If there's a lot, then pour some off and just leave a little. Then the next thing we're going to do is put this in the warmer with some water and get it up to temperature. So I've put just enough water in the warmer that the container will sit on the stand and not topple over. And in fact, you can it's quite a good idea to put a large nut or something solid, something heavy in there, because first of all it holds it down onto the lid, the stand inside there, and secondly it tends to help hold the heat when you take it out later to do some gluing with. But anyway, for now I'm not going to bother with that. So the container just goes in there, plug it in, we put the lid on, and we just wait for it to come up to temperature and for the glue to dissolve, basically. So how do you know when your glue is ready? Well, basically all the granules should have dissolved. You can see this is not quite ready yet. There's still some undissolved granules in there, and I'll show you the desired consistency of the glue, if it's right, once that's happened. You may already be thinking this is quite a lot of faff, but don't forget that what I'm doing here is making up a batch of glue, which will do several, glue operations. It can be stored in between times, and I'll show you that really once it's made up, using a batch is actually very quick and convenient. On a par with getting glue out of a bottle. It does take a little longer than that, to be fair, but it's really not a major issue. Okay, so it's been about, I don't know, 15 minutes perhaps, and the glue is now ready to use. All the granules have dissolved, and this is the consistency you're looking for. It's sort of like a very runny honey, and you can adjust the consistency if it's wrong by either letting it heat up longer if it's too thin, or if it's too thick, you just add another few drops of water and let it warm up again, and then try and get it to this consistency here. And that's pretty much all there is to it. So the glue now is ready to use right away, or this is a very small batch obviously, but it can be stored and brought out ready for use. As I mentioned, I think in the previous episode, I store it in the freezer, and it can come straight from the freezer into your water bath. So basically the time it takes to get from the frozen state to what you've just seen is all the time you need before you glue up, and that's normally, perhaps 5 to 10 minutes, not more for sure. So here you can see some of the glue I've stored in my freezer, ready to use, and when I want to use it I simply drop it in the thing, loosen the lid, drop it in the water bath, wait for it to get to the ambient temperature of the water, and then I'm ready to go. So it really is pretty straightforward to use. So when you're ready to use the glue, you simply spread it on one of your pieces of wood. You don't need it on both most of the time unless one of them is particularly absorbent. And actually another couple of advantages I forgot to mention last time around are that the glue has pretty strong initial tack. Once it's got to the gel stage, it will hold the two pieces together, and in fact as it dries it will draw them closer together, so it's kind of self-clamping in that respect. If your pieces of wood are thin, then and you're gluing on the on the flat surface, say I wanted to glue this to this, you would need a clamp because the water in the glue will obviously swell one side of each piece of wood and they'll tend to curl. But for thicker pieces like this, the glue is self-clamping, and I don't need anything more than that. And that kind of rub joint is great because it squeezes excess glue out, and means that there's a very, very thin glue line which will be almost invisible actually. If you've got two matching pieces of wood, it's often very hard to find the glue line if you've done a good job preparing the two surfaces. And that's it. So really the operation to use the glue is pretty quick. You take it out of the freezer, drop it in there, 10 minutes later you're ready, tops, maybe 5 minutes, and you use it just as I've shown. Clamp if needed, but otherwise it's like any other glue. What about setting time? Well, I normally leave it a few hours, to be sure, but this is completely immovable in less than 5 minutes. I wouldn't put any strain on it, but it's best to leave it a few hours, I would say. And yet another advantage, which I forgot to mention last time, is cleanup, because there are two ways you can do this. One is to leave it until the gel stage, which this almost is now. I would leave it a little bit longer to get slightly more firm, but then you can literally rub the glue off. It comes off in sort of rolls of softish jelly-like consistency. Or you can clean it with hot water, and very often immediately after I do a glue up, I will put some hot water on the seams of the joint and just scrub with a toothbrush or something, and that gets rid of all the visible glue on the surface. But it's almost equally easy to clean it up afterwards using hot water, or, as I say, using the sort of rubbing off the jelly technique. So cleanup is super easy, and it doesn't leave any residue on the wood, doesn't affect finishes either. So there are a couple more advantages in the use of it, which I should have perhaps mentioned in the last Luthier's lunch break episode. Well, that was it for this episode. I hope you found it interesting and useful, and I hope I've encouraged you to give hide glue a go. It's good stuff. I actually prefer using it to most other glues, but there are times when the other glues are just more convenient or do a better job. I mean, this would never replace CA glue, for example. Anyway, until next time, goodbye for now.